listening to TC Talks on TNT.
What's going on, everybody? It is TC here, back with another episode of TC Talks, and I just want to thank you for tuning in yet again, and thank you for tuning into the Winner Circle on Wednesday night. I had a lot of people slide into the DMs, as I like to say, on the show, and give me some love, say they were coming over from YouTube after checking out TC Talks, and I just want to thank you guys for doing all that, showing the love. I'd like it if you guys continue to do all that, because I will continue to give you all the love in return. In fact, this is the second video of today that I'm giving you guys, so just look at that, all that I do to appreciate you guys, show you that I'm dedicated to being here. But in either case, we got Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears. They just took on the Seattle Seahawks and came away with yet again another victory in the preseason. So a lot of smoke and mirrors right now, I guess is a good way to put it, for the Chicago Bears being 2-0 in the preseason, because that's not the season a lot of people are expecting from the Chicago Bears, and personally, I'm not either. And we'll dive a little bit more into that. But first, I want to remind you guys that we do have an Instagram, the Winner Circle STC. It's what we use for our shows, and that's how you guys can go ahead and slide into my DMs during the Winner Circle tune-in radio show that takes place Wednesdays at 5 p.m. But for the Chicago Bears, when you look at what they have going on for Justin Fields, they have revamped the offense a little bit. It's no longer this exclusively passing team that we saw under Matt Nagy. It's no longer this exclusively pocket passing team, under center all the time, stationary team. It is modernized in the sense that you have a bunch of players going in motion and seaming on every play just to be able to create some confusion and disrupt the defense a little bit on every play. And then on top of that, we're seeing a lot more of the RPO, the run pass option from Justin Fields, in addition to play action as well. So it's giving Justin Fields that ability to sell the run on these defensive backs, on these linebackers, allow his receivers that extra half second to be able to get a break in or be able to get some distance on their defender, because now, bam, they're able to sneak in a pass, because Justin Fields, as good as he is, he does need the ability to have that benefit of the doubt on a ball. I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback. I'm not saying he doesn't have the arm strength, but sometimes the accuracy can be a problem. Does that mean that he's an inaccurate quarterback? No. In fact, he's one of the most accurate deep ball quarterbacks, specifically as a rookie last year, that's ever come into the NFL. So I'm not trying to knock him and say that he's bad, but in cases where there's guys breathing down his neck because of a bad offensive line, in cases where he's on the run scrambling for his life because, once again, the offensive line has let him down, then I would want him to be able to make the surefire throw, and I would want there to be a little bit of a separation between the wide receivers and the defenders. So I think this whole system bodes well for Justin Fields, especially when you look at some of his other numbers from 2021, where he went into the season not being the starter, but still comparatively to where he was able to make up for it in moments of greatness. And what I mean by that is Chicago did not run a lot of play action, but play action is where Justin Fields seemed to excel. He was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL when it comes to passing on play action in terms of yardage. So for him to average that as a rookie on a team that didn't really rely on play action, it could only show you the potential that the Chicago Bears can have going into this upcoming season. Now, when it comes to these improvements that they could make, I think a big part of the improvement that's gone a little too far in the right direction, perhaps going into the wrong direction now, is the fact that Justin Fields is getting a little bit too quick on his reads. Now, I was watching this amazing video by the QB School, and it was talking about how you could see Justin Fields, instead of getting stuck on his first progression, maybe working to his second progression. He's going too fast from progression to progression. Now, I know a lot of you out there are like, TC, what are you talking about? Who's this guy you're talking about? Some YouTuber? What do you mean? Well, I kind of started to agree with him. At first, I did not. I was like, there's no way that this is what's going on. But after watching the video, I decided to re-watch it and dive back into it and see what this guy was talking about, despite how often he was doing that himself in the video. I decided to go back and just watch it. I turned off the audio, and I'm just looking at all the different receivers over and over again to break down where they are. And honestly, not every time, but there were a few times where Justin Fields will look away from his number one target too soon, and a split second later, that guy is wide open. And it's unfortunate, but it does show that Justin Fields is being able to work through, number one target to the check down. That's improvement, and that's something you want to see in a young quarterback, that he's able to process the field within that small time frame that he does have with that Chicago offensive line. So if he's able to just slow it down a little bit, be able to work through his progressions properly, be able to allow separation when it's needed, then he could get deadly. He could be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, specifically when you start talking about how he's able to implement the play action, especially when you start to talk about how deadly David Montgomery is in the running game. He's easily a 1,000-yard rusher when used properly, but when you just want to throw David Montgomery to the Wolves, then I guess it's the same as any running back. They're just not going to come back. They're not going to come back the same way. They might get a little beat up, but credit to David Montgomery for being able to hold himself together, not suffering any major injuries over these past few years on the Chicago Bears. But beyond just the offensive side on the ball, the defense is still looking pretty good, even without Roquan Smith. Now, I know they kind of got torched a little bit by Kansas City's first-string offense, and honestly, though, is anybody going to try to say that that wasn't expected or a given? Kansas City is yet again a playoff contender, yet again fighting for that AFC Conference Championship. The Chicago Bears are vying for maybe a 500 season kind of deal, so they're not exactly in the same boat. But at the same time, in this most recent game against the Seattle Seahawks, the Chicago defense actually looked pretty good. Now, I know there's a major jump between Kansas City and Seattle, but that only shines light to the fact that perhaps Chicago won't be one of the worst teams in the NFL. You see Justin Fields growing a little bit as a quarterback, not being so careless with the football, not being so clumsy, making some rational decisions overall, and working through his progressions. But then you also see the defense being able to shut down a lesser opponent with the Seattle Seahawks, not giving up any points until late in the third quarter. So that's exactly what you want to see with this team, a team that has Justin Fields growing every week, a team that has a solid defense who's able to put you in contention, especially against these low-level teams, and then an offense that seems to be getting there. I don't want to say that they're good. I don't want to say that they're bad, but there's definitely a level of progress from week one even to the end of this week. So I'm not trying to say that Chicago's going to be competitive. I've seen a lot of people get way too hyped on this group. There's people saying that, there's 8 to 10 games they can win. And it's like, sure, they could win all 17 games. There's a possibility. But is that possibility high? I think that's what you really need to look at. Even with those 8 to 10 games, I know exactly what they're talking about. The Detroit Lions might be able to get one past the Chicago Bears this season. I don't find that too far-fetched. So just knowing that, I don't think it's going to be a good season for Chicago. Perhaps I'm wrong. Perhaps Justin Fields comes out and is a completely revamped quarterback for week one. However, I don't think it's going to be that fast of a change for Justin Fields to make. Overall, he's made a tremendous improvement since year one. You could totally see that he's not being as careless and happy-go-lucky with the football or the deep ball. He's willing to accept the check down. He's willing to work through his progression. And honestly, despite a little bit of lack of success in the running game so far, I think he's going to get there. I think he just needs to remember that he's a quarterback and he's looking to pass first. He shouldn't just be trying to rely on his legs, because sometimes it really does seem like that's what he relies on too much. But I want to know your opinions down in the comment section below, or slide into the DMs on our Instagram at the Winner Circle STC. Are the Chicago Bears going to be competitive in any sense, or am I right? They're going to be more of a joke kind of team going into the 2022 season. Also, if you guys want to let us know anything you want us to be talking about here at TC Talks or on the Winner inner circle, go ahead and let us know as well, because we're going to be diving into some football conversations, but we don't want to get lost in the weeds of all the other great sporting events as well. So if there's anything that you're like, hey, TC, this is some huge news, a lot of people aren't talking about it, or hey, TC, I'm really interested in this, but I'm not really getting it as much. Can you break it down for me? We could definitely do that. Just let us know down in the comment section below or in the DMs on Instagram. Until next time, this has been TC with TC Talks. Peace.